Don't waste my precious time dawdling, you boorish oaf. Come in already. Finally, you're here. It feels like I've been waiting for ages. Honestly, I think I found another wrinkle in the mirror. No, I know it's not your fault. It's just that today I'm feeling so... blah. As you can see, I haven't even managed to get myself out of bed today. That's why I summoned you to my chambers. Ah, well, I'm glad you asked. I'd have told you anyways, of course, but still. Well, it's all thanks to the common rabble, you see. They've been making a mess of things, and making things quite difficult for me, my little helper. Oh, it's patronizing. Exhausting. Oh, it's all the same things as usual, really. Revolts, petitions, general rabble-rousing. But lately, it's been happening more and more often across my empire. The commoners are banding together, causing more and more mischief, making things difficult. Everything's become much more difficult. It's been especially hard on the trade routes. I've had to wait 3 extra days for my new silk sheets to arrive. 3 days. It's ridiculous. And don't even get me started on the horrible things they say. If you think evil king is bad, then you don't know the half of what those dreadful plebeians are capable of thinking up. It's as though all the time they could be spending serving me and being productive, they're putting towards nasty, filthy, rebellious thoughts instead. Oh, well, you're here to listen to me, for the most part. There's no fun in complaining to myself, you see. If you need any official reason, then, I don't know, I suppose you could advise me on how to manage these outbursts. I don't really think I need that, though. It's all their fault for being so terrible. I'm doing my best. And, while I'm venting, why don't we enjoy some treats? I need comfort food. Even in the meals I enjoy, my problems haunt me so. Thanks to all these rebellions and protests, it means less options for me. Some of the basics are getting hard to come by. I swear, I'd commit a genocide for something deep-fried. But we're so low on oil that we've been having to conserve most of it to keep lanterns lit. Ah, right on time. It's a bit meager, but I had the kitchen prepare some treacle tarts and tea cakes for us. With tea, naturally. Although it does have to be herbal. As scant of a snack as this is, it's still splurging a bit on ingredients. If this goes on, I might have to resort to, I don't know, sandwiches or something like that. Whatever commoners eat. Regardless, I hope you enjoy them. Why do I think they're upset? Honestly, I think they're just incapable of appreciating what they have. Always wanting more, and more. You're a bit like them too, you know. I see the sour face you pull when you think I'm not looking. You're very lucky, you know. You get to live in this castle, eat this food, and be in my presence regularly. And yet, you still seem testy about little trifles, like how you don't get a choice. I mean, why should anyone be upset about having such a good life? Just because it's not their choice. You're certainly better than the rest of them, though. You at least know how to hold your tongue. Most of the time, at least. The rest of the rabble say what they want, not even bothering to show an ounce of respect. Ah, well, if you mean what they claim is a problem, well, all sorts of things. I raised taxes quite a bit recently. With all the worry over this new alliance, I've been increasing fortifications along the border to make sure they aren't tempted to grab any of the Empire's new land. Not to mention, I'm having a second citadel built so I can retreat if things get dicey. And that certainly doesn't come cheap. Aside from that, they've been pretty outspoken about how many crimes are punishable by execution. That's one I can't even begin to understand. I mean, what's the problem? If you're not a criminal, you have nothing to fear. If anything, I should be holding more executions. To get rid of more criminals, of course. But these things pass with time. This is hardly the first time I've dealt with masses and their revolutions. I have some things in the works to take care of it. Ah, well, that's unusual. Just a moment ago I praised you for knowing when to keep your mouth shut about things you disagree with. So, you think I'm an awful ruler, do you? Perhaps it's the fact I've become so desensitized to insults recently. But I don't mind that you said that. It's just funny to me. I mean, what do you know of ruling an empire? Do you think you could do a better job? Well, you might find it harder than you think. I'm sure in your little head you're imagining you could just end all taxes, convince every prisoner to be a law-abiding citizen, and give every person in the empire every single thing they wanted. You remind me of my father in that respect. Have I told you about him? I'm sure I haven't. I don't tend to talk about him much. Well, before I was the ruler of the Great Abyssal Empire, I was once a prince of the small kingdom of Garrel. My father was the king, and he was an endless optimist, and a generous man at that. He loved every single citizen, and believed his duty was to care for them to the best of his ability. I loved my father dearly. It's hard not to love someone who's so caring, of course, but if anything, it just made it harder to watch him ruin himself after all. There is such a thing as being too trusting. My poor father chose to believe in the goodness of every person, but sadly, not every person chooses to be good. He was always taken advantage of his whole life. People knew they could beg him for whatever they wanted, and he would give it to them, if they were convincing enough. People called him the Fool King. It wore him down. Day after day, he spent so much money on granting the masses whatever they wished. Every single city, town, and village in the Empire had clean, paved roads, a generous garrison of well-equipped soldiers for protection, and more. And he barely taxed them. But of course, that meant he was constantly draining from the royal coffins and borrowing money from other kingdoms. It was impossible for someone to juggle forever. Trying to find new ways to get money without demanding it from the citizens became impossible, and the stress of it drove him to his deathbed. When I took the throne, I inherited the largest debt any kingdom had ever occurred. Part of me really wanted to just finish the job and let the kingdom fall to ruin, just to spite those greedy beasts. But I couldn't let my father's legacy be destroyed, even if his actions nearly doomed the kingdom. My first act was to start declaring wars on every single kingdom we owed money to, one at a time. It sounded rash, but those well-equipped soldiers I mentioned, combined with my unusually strong affinity for magic, made it more than possible. Not to mention, I was able to repurpose much of the things my father had spent his money on the war effort. With every victory, I bought another kingdom under my rule. The debt was gradually erased, and I gained their riches. I bought all those kingdoms under my rule and formed my empire, After that, I resolved to make the rabble work for my comfort, instead of the other way around. I won't repeat the foolish mistakes of the fool King of Garrel. I'm feeling much better. Once again, you've managed to help me without even meaning to. I'm astonished that you can do so much so inadvertently. You certainly are my perfect little helper. What? Nothing else to say? Were you not expecting me to have a reason for what I do? Everyone thinks I was just born this way, do they? I suppose that's why they call me the Evil King. Such a shame. I can tell you disagree with me, but it seems you're at a loss on how to respond to my story. Well, I'll tell you, anytime you don't know what to say to me, you can simply bow and say, "Yes, Your Magnificence." You don't need to be clever, you just need to obey. Well, since I'm feeling better, why don't we go on a carriage ride? It's such a lovely day out. Well, I don't actually know that. I haven't looked outside. But I can make it a lovely day if it isn't. The perks of being a powerful sorcerer. Come along, little helper.